Right, let us start with questions. James MacCleary.
Number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The early years are my number 1 priority as Education Secretary. We'll deliver a sea change in early years education to give parents better work choices and children better life chances. We'll start by repurposing empty classrooms to create or expand school-based nurseries, making childcare more accessible and affordable for hard-pressed families. I encourage state-funded primary schools working with their local authorities to consider applying before the application window closes on the 19th of December.
Please, James MacCleary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With government data showing 70,000 more early years places need to be created by next year and an overhaul of outdated business rates promised, can the Secretary of State commit to removing unfair business rates from nurseries and preschools who will now be mostly delivering government-funded childcare?
I'm grateful to the Honourable Gentleman for raising that question. It is undoubtedly a challenge to deliver the rollout, but we are determined to do it because it is so important for parents and for children's life chances. We do intend to reform the early years sector overall. We'll be looking very closely at this into next year, and I would welcome further input from the Honourable Gentleman and his party opposite on the way forward.
It's really Dalton. Oh, you're not standing. Kirith Entwistle.
Mr. Speaker. As a mother and...
Sorry, it's not you personally, but if you're standing, I think you're going to ask a question, and when you sit down, I'm like left high and dry. Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. As a mother in the North West, I'd like to start by thanking the Minister and welcoming the Government's £1.8 billion commitment to expanding publicly funded childcare. Yeah. As we transition towards more publicly funded childcare, could the Minister share any plans for interim support to help keep childcare affordable for working families relying on private providers?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for raising that. She is right that as the rollout continues, we will shortly reach the situation where 80% of childcare is government-backed. I think it is therefore right in those circumstances that we look closely at whether we're getting the best quality provision for our children, and as part of our early years strategy review we will take account of all considerations. We are looking at a range of factors for the sector, including workforce recruitment, quality of provision and much more besides, and I look forward to working with her on that.
Welcoming the new Secretary of State, Laura Trott.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and can I say how delighted I am to be doing this role. We will be a constructive opposition working in the best interests of young people. And in that spirit, can I ask the Secretary of State to confirm that the government's early years funding rates for all age groups will increase to reflect the changes in national employer national insurance contributions, and if she can give us a figure for how much that will cost the Department for Education?
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to start by beginning and welcoming the Right Honourable Lady to her place. It is the best job in opposition alongside this being the best job in government, and I'm sure whatever disagreements we might have in the weeks and months to come, we can all get behind that and how important education is to our country. We'll be setting out more detail on funding rates in due course. What I would say to the Right Honourable Lady, where it came to the commitments that her party left behind, they didn't leave behind a plan to make them real, and instead what they left us was a £22 billion hole in the public finances, and this government's had to take some tough decisions in order to get our public finances back on a stable footing.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Munira Wilson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. 2/3 of early years places are delivered by private and voluntary providers. So, further to the Shadow Education Secretary's question, what assessment has the Department for Education made of the impact of last week's national insurance rise for these providers? How much more does the Department expect parents will have to pay in nursery fees? How much additional cost will the Department have to bear to fund existing and planned so-called free hours for parents?
As announced at the budget, we expect to provide £8.1 billion for the early years entitlements in 25-26, around a 30% increase compared to the previous year, and we will continue to deliver on the rollouts. It is because this government has sought to protect education priorities in the budget. Where it comes to the precise question that she raises, we are looking in more detail at what changes mean for providers in the early years sector. We'll have more to say shortly. But of course, alongside changes that are taking place in terms of the National Insurance Employers' contribution rate, We are also increasing the employment allowance to £10,500 and expanding this to all eligible employers, so smaller providers may pay no national insurance at all in 25-26.
Munira.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Alongside formal childcare, many parents want to have the option of spending more time at home with their babies in those precious early months, which are so crucial for a child's development. Does the Minister agree that at less than half the minimum wage, statutory maternity pay is far from excessive? And can she tell us what discussions she has had with ministerial colleagues about boosting support for those parents who want to spend more time at home rather than being rushed back to work in order to give families real choice in how they care for their children?
I'm grateful to the lady for raising that question. I agree it is important that we get this balance right. That's why the Deputy Prime Minister and the Secretary of State for Business and Trade is looking very carefully as part of our wider reforms of employment support and employment law about what more we need to do around parental leave entitlements. But I do, like her, share the concern around the comments that we've heard from the now leader of the Conservative Party around maternity pay. I want to make sure that parents have got choices about what works for them, what's best for them, and what best supports children's development in those crucial early months.
Afzal Khan.
Question 2, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What schools teach can play an important role alongside wider activity within the government's Safer Streets mission in tackling knife crime. Relationship, sex and health education includes content on situations that lead young people to carry knives, including criminal exploitation, county lines, operations and grooming relationships. We are reviewing the content to ensure it remains relevant and protects children's well-being.
Afzal Khan.
Mr. Speaker, Greater Manchester continues to experience some of the highest rates of knife violence in the country, with over 10,000 recorded incidents since 2020. Organisations like the Greater Manchester Violence Reduction Unit have been doing excellent work in early prevention by engaging children and young people through community-led projects, including theatre productions. Given the importance of early community-based intervention, does the Minister agree that providing support for such initiative is important in tackling knife violence?
I thank my honourable friend for raising such an important topic and highlighting the good work of the Greater Manchester Violence Reduction Unit. As well as the work on RHSC curriculum, this government will create a new Young Futures programme, intervening early to stop young people being drawn into crime through preventive action, learning from best practice across the country. It is vital we have a system that can identify and support those young people who need it most, be they victims or potential perpetrators.
We're a Hobhouse.
Mr. Speaker, preventative education is very critical, not just when it comes to knife crime. A recent report from the University of Bath highlighted that 1 in 6 vapes confiscated in school contain the synthetic drug spice, a highly addictive drug that condemns young people, particularly vulnerable young people, to a life of crime and addiction. Would the Secretary of State agree to a special educational programme to address this alarming issue of spice-spiked vapes in schools?
I thank the honourable member for her question. We want to make sure that obviously every school and college across our country is a safe environment for children to learn. I'm very happy to meet with her to understand those issues in more detail.
Ian Lavery.
Question number 3, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. School support staff are crucial to ensuring that we give children the best possible life chances. That is why we are reinstating the School Support Staff Negotiating Body, a new national voice for some of those who do the most important work in our schools. Mr. Speaker, in 2010, the Tories scrapped the body. Within our first 100 days, Labour started the legislative process to bring it back. That's because we value the vital role that support staff play in our education system.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that the answer to that question. But the low pay and limited career progression are driving many teaching support staff out of our classrooms. 3/4 of the profession are either considering leaving or are actively looking to leave, with 1 in 5 teaching assistant posts currently vacant. Will my right honourable friend recommit to addressing this recruitment and retention crisis and ensure that these hugely valued employees receive the wages, terms and conditions that they've longed for so long?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. He can be assured that the School Support Staff Negotiating Body will be tasked with establishing a national terms and conditions handbook, training, career progression routes and fair pay rates for support staff to make sure that we can recruit and retain the brilliant people from teaching assistants to catering staff and all of those who make the functioning of our schools essential.
Earl Bolton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Teaching assistants in my constituency of South Devon are struggling to support a growing number of children who need extra help with speech and language skills. What is the Minister doing to ensure that all school support staff have access to relevant training in speech and language development so that they can better support these children?
The Honourable Lady is right to raise that, and our teaching assistants in particular have a crucial role to play where it comes to supporting children with special educational needs and disabilities. That's why we've committed additional funding this year to ensure that we can roll out the Nuffield Early Language Intervention, to ensure that there is additional early speech and language support for children who are struggling, and our teaching assistants and others in support roles will be a crucial part of that. But I recognise there is much more that we need to do after 14 years of Conservative failure.
Shadow Minister Neil O'Brien.
Mr. Speaker, on the subject of pay, what is the cost to schools and colleges of the national insurance increase, and how much will be provided to them in compensation? And can the Secretary of State confirm clearly that they will be fully compensated for the increased prices that suppliers and indirectly employed members of staff like caterers, IT and premises staff will be charging as a result? Will those indirect costs be covered, yes or no?
Mr. Speaker, I'll just begin by welcoming the Honourable Gentleman to his place. What I can say is that where it comes to schools and colleges, they will be compensated at a national level. What I would, however, just point out to the Honourable Gentleman is that when I became Secretary of State in July, I was presented with the Teachers' Pay Review Body Award, 5.5%, that the last government received, put in a drawer, ran away and called an election. We have backed our teachers who are crucial to the life chances of our children, and that's why I was delighted that we were able to honour that award and recognise the vital contribution our teachers make, and that's how we will recruit 6,500 new expert teachers. If they are refusing to back our commitments on VAT, then they should set out how many teachers they intend to cut.
Bill Esterson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question 4.
Under the Conservatives, young people felt unprepared for their futures and employers agreed. That's why this Labour government has established an independent curriculum and assessment review chaired by Professor Becky Francis. The review aims to deliver a broad and rich curriculum that will ensure young people leave education ready for life and work, and this includes embedding digital, oracy and life skills.
Bill Esterson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is a shortage of technical skilled workers right across our economy. It is a chronic problem, not least in sectors like clean energy. For example, there are only 3,000 registered heat pump installers. To deliver the last government's target of 600,000 installations a year, we would need 27,000 of them. That is repeated right across the economy. So does my honourable friend agree with me that schools have a hugely important role in encouraging young people into technical roles, and can she say what the government is doing to support young people into technical skilled jobs?
I congratulate my honourable friend on his work on the Energy, Security and Net Zero Select Committee, which I know he has a long-established record of championing in this House. And I absolutely agree with him, which is why our curriculum review will include speaking to employers as part of that consultation to look at the essential knowledge and skills which will support and enable students to adapt and thrive in the world and the workplace of the future, and to ensure we have the workforce in place also to ensure that specialist knowledge within schools to support young people to thrive.
Patrick Spencer.
Everyone knows that a knowledge-rich curriculum is the reason that the English education system improved dramatically under the last government. It was the embedding of academic rigour that really produced phenomenal results in PISA. With this in mind, can the Secretary of State confirm to us that she has no intention of diluting the curriculum and diluting any focus on academic rigour?
I think the honourable gentleman ignores the many challenges that young people face in our school system currently, and this is why we have established the independent review, and it will consider areas to focus in light of the evidence and responses for that call to evidence and widespread engagement with stakeholders, including employers. So the review will seek to focus on the most significant issues currently in our curriculum and assessment, and it will ensure that it will not destabilise the system. We are looking for evolution of our curriculum, not a revolution.
Shadow Minister James Wilde.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think we'll have to agree to disagree with the Minister about the record of the last government in driving up apprenticeships, and particularly the work done by our colleague Robert Houghton. But looking ahead, how much does the Minister expect the number of full apprenticeships to grow by over the course of this Parliament? And will she publish the Department's assessment of the move to the Growth and Skills Levy and what that does to expected numbers starting apprenticeships?
Our reformed growth and skill levy will deliver greater flexibility for learners and employers, and it will align with our industrial strategy, creating routes into good skilled jobs in growing industries such as in construction, digital and green skills. And we want to ensure a shorter duration and foundation apprenticeships in those targeted sectors to help more people learn new high skills at work, fueling innovation in businesses across the country and provide those high quality entry pathways for young people. We're in the process of designing the Growth and Skills Levy, but we will set out more details in due course.
Patrick Hurley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question 5, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Further education is vital for breaking down barriers to opportunity, driving growth and generating clean energy. The budget allocated £300 million to support young people to improve skills development. In September, the Department launched a new phase of It All Starts With Skills campaign to promote programmes such as apprenticeships and T-levels.
Patrick Hurley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 14 years of Tory decline, there's much to do in this country to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. There's a lot of people who need jobs as well to help us achieve that. I'm glad to see that the new government is working to increase the number of students being trained in the industries of the future. But can the Minister please advise on how she is working across government to make sure that more young people can find those opportunities locally rather than having to move away from their local communities?
I thank my honourable friend for his question. Central to our opportunity mission is that where you're from should not determine where you end up in life. This government is serious about supporting young people. We're working across government to ensure that young people are supported in their communities through devolution, local growth plans, local skills improvement plans and through the Youth Guarantee.
Tom Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The largest provider of vocational education and training opportunities in my constituency is Harrogate College. They were previously promised over £20 million in a combination of loans and grants under the FE Transformation Capital Fund. Have written repeatedly to the government on this matter, asking if they could secure an extension to that funding period, because due to a hold-up in the planning process, they won't be able to meet the deadlines in the current situation. So will the Government Minister commit to guaranteeing the funding for Harrogate College and that rebuild?
I thank the honourable member for his question, and he's quite clearly outlined many failings from the previous government. What I will do is I will ask my noble friend, who is the Minister for Skills, to meet with him.
Mike Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 6.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer questions 6, 15, 16 and 17 together. Every child deserves the opportunity to achieve and thrive, but currently far from every child has that chance. We have already announced that high needs funding will increase by almost £1 billion in 2025 to 26 compared to 2024 to 25. We will work with the sector to strengthen accountability, improve inclusivity through Ofsted, supporting professionals to increase SEND expertise and encourage schools to set up resourced provision or special educational needs units in mainstream schools.
Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent Susie waited for an EHCP for 42 weeks for her son Harrison. Mr Speaker, by law, these have to be provided within 20 weeks, so the Conservative-run Kent County Council, in taking 42 weeks, took more than twice the amount of time that they should have done. When it came, it was full of mistakes, and Harrison is now in the wrong school, class size is too big, doesn't have the specialist support he requires. Previously, Kent County Council was put in special measures in order to sort out this problem with EHCP provision. Would the Secretary of State support KCC going back into special measures so that students like Harrison get the support that they deserve?
I'm sorry to hear about the challenges that his constituent has faced, and we know that local authorities have been impacted by the increased demand for education, health and care plans and workforce capacity issues. So more efficient and effective service delivery and communication with schools and families is central to turning this around. We will work as quickly as possible to ensure that there is more effective response and early identification for children, and I'll take away the particular example he raises.
Richard Ford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In Devon, £55 million is being spent by Devon County Council on private provision on special educational needs and disabilities without enough quality control by the County Council. State schools in Mid and East Devon want to be able to help provide more SEND specialists and TAs. But EHCPs are prescribing one-to-one care with just £3,000, which is hardly enough for one-to-one provision. Will the government consider setting up more SEND resource bases in Devon?
The honourable gentleman raises an important point, and it is vital for turning around the current situation that we know far too many parts of the country face, that there isn't sufficient mainstream inclusion for children with special educational needs. There aren't enough specialist units as part of mainstream school inclusion, and we don't have the specialist places as well that are needed. So I will, of course, take away the specific example that he asked about today.
Alison Griffiths.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Speaker. In West Sussex, EHCP requests are running at over 120 per month. Can the Secretary of State confirm whether her SEND reforms will include measures that could make it harder to get an EHCP, potentially making it harder for children to qualify for special school places?
I think the Honourable Lady raises an important point, and I suspect it is on the back of 14 years of letting down children, needing the education that is clearly wanting in so many parts of the country, which is explained by the number of members raising these issues here today. The Honourable Lady would do well to reflect on the record of the past 14 years. We are changing this situation as fast as we can, but it will take time.
Manuela Portugal.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The previous Conservative government left SEND families in Stratford-on-Avon to fend for themselves. I want to see not just additional SEND places, but also continued support for children already attending specialist provision. And further, we need proper investment in home-to-school transport. Children were left without transport at the beginning of the academic year, depriving them of their access to education. So what is the government doing to ensure not just that budgets reflect need, but that they do so to address the problem immediately?
I recognise the long list of challenges that the Honourable Lady sets out that she knows her constituents are facing. Children with special educational needs and disabilities are being failed with poor outcomes. Parents are struggling to get their children the support they need and deserve. And this government's ambition is that all children and young people with special educational needs or in alternative provision get that right support to achieve and succeed in their education and as they move into adult life. We are moving as fast as we can. It's a key part of our opportunity mission, and we'll continue to do so.
Chair of the Select Committee, Helen Hayes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The additional £1 billion for SEND support in the budget is very welcome. But the Minister will know that local authorities remain anxious about the forthcoming end to the statutory override of direct schools grant deficits in March 2026. Can the Minister say what discussions she is having with the Treasury and with the Department for Housing, Communities and Local Government on a plan to prevent the end of the statutory override from becoming a cliff-edge financial calamity for local authorities and children with SEND?
As the Honourable Lady mentions, high needs funding will increase by almost £1 billion in 2025 to 26 compared to 24-25, and it does bring the high needs funding to a total of £11.9 billion. This funding will help local authorities and schools with the increasing costs of supporting children and young people with SEND, and we will continue to support local authorities to meet these demands and to reform our system so that we can create that inclusive education for every child.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to raise the issue of governance. There are too many controlling minds over the system, which ultimately stymies local authorities' ability to reform services, to embed a culture of nurturing and to ensure that the best interests of children are represented. Within reviewing the SEND system, will she have a look at governance and ensure that there is one controlling mind, and that is that of the local authority?
The Honourable Lady will be aware of the plans that we have in place to ensure that all schools do cooperate within their local vicinity with their local authority in terms of place planning and admissions, and to ensure that we have a school system that serves the whole community and ensure that all children in our system, whether they have special educational needs and disabilities or otherwise, are properly served and given the opportunity to thrive within our education system.
Ashley Dalton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and my apologies for my premature bobbing at the beginning of questions. My constituent's been waiting for over a year for Conservative-run Lancashire County Council to issue her 15-year-old son's ECHP. In that time, he has attempted suicide and he's stopped eating. My constituent's health is suffering as a result of the stress. How can the Minister assure my constituent the additional £1 billion of funding for SEND provision will speed up the issuing of EHC plans so students with special needs get the support that they need?
Again, I'm so sorry to hear about the experience of her constituent, and she's right to raise it today. We know that far too many families and children are waiting far too long to get the support that they need. We are determined that we will reform the system, and indeed the needs of children should be recognised at the earliest possible stage, and they should not be waiting for EHCPs in order to get that support within our education system. That is the change that we want to see, but we recognise the demand on EHCPs and the process, and it needs to improve.
It's right across Lancashire, and Chorley included. James Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The 2014 reforms put SEN right at the heart of the SEN system, SEN rights, but the then government only did half a job, failing to honour the resource it had promised. EHCPs take too long to access, and specialist education is often sent for out of borough, which is more expensive. How will the government provide more SEN provision in our schools, in our mainstream schools, across towns like mine in Bury?
My honourable friend is absolutely right to raise the priority of ensuring that children with special educational needs and disabilities are accommodated in mainstream schools with their friends wherever possible. We're ensuring that the training is in place from the earliest stage possible for teachers in the workforce to be able to teach children who have special educational needs and disabilities, to ensure we have educational psychology services in place to support schools to make any changes that are necessary. We really want to work in partnership with the sector to get the best outcomes for every child.
Jane Craft.
Speaker, number 7.
Ensuring that parents can access affordable and high-quality childcare is a priority for this government. Our focus will be on greater opportunities to access early education for every family and greater opportunities for children to thrive and develop. As an initial step, we've announced the bidding round for the first 300 school-based nurseries from next September.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many early years providers struggle to meet the needs of children with SEND. Lack of funds, lack of training and lack of specialist staff often means that those who do provide a good or an excellent support become quickly oversubscribed. Will the Minister set out what steps the Department of Education is taking to reassure parents and carers of children with SEND that their child will be able to access the childcare or early years provision in the area that meets their needs?
I thank my honourable friend for her question. We are supporting the workforce to develop skills and confidence to work effectively with children with SEND and reviewing early years funding arrangements to ensure that they meet the needs of children with SEND. I'd be very happy to meet with my honourable friend or to visit her constituency to understand the issues that her providers are facing.
Dr. Luke Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Martin Lewes has long campaigned for changes in childcare, particularly as the way in which it's set up can damage single parents. There's a cliff edge that's naturally there. Now, the last government brought in a way to look at it to create a consultation on thresholds for households taken as one. The government in the budget seems to have scrapped that. So will they be speaking to the Treasury to decide how they're going to overcome this cliff edge that affects many single parents?
I thank the honourable member for his question. With this, we have a child-centred government, and early years is a priority for the Secretary of State. We'll be focused on reforming the childcare system to ensure it is fit for purpose for the future, to ensure high quality for all young people. We are taking our concerns from the sector seriously, and we want to ensure a sustainable system going forward.
Sarah Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question 8.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer questions 8 and 24 together. Last month, the National Audit Office confirmed what many families already know. The SEND system we inherited from the Conservatives is broken. Indeed, the number of honourable members across this House raising the concerns on behalf of their constituents shows the scale of the challenge that we have inherited. We are working as quickly as we can to make the changes families need. It is a huge, complex reform, but we are determined to fix it.
Sarah Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Far too many people in my constituency of Hyndburn find the current EHCP process to be adversarial and one which fails to assess their child's needs adequately. As the government works to reform the system, how can we be sure that the voices of parents and children will remain at the heart of any policy change?
I recognise what the Honourable Lady is saying, and we engage with children, young people, parents and carers in the development of policy, including through our participation contract. Next week, I'll be meeting our National Young People's Group, which is a diverse group of young people with special educational needs and disabilities from across England who share views and experiences with us, and I'm looking forward to it.
Lawrence Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At the recent SEND surgery, which I organised with SEND Socials Birmingham, one message came through time and again. Different public bodies are not working together as the Children and Families Act intended, and this is contributing to long delays and distress. So will the Minister agree to receive representations from young people and families in South Birmingham so that their negative experience can at least contribute to that important work of reforming the SEND system?
Absolutely. We are committed to working with families to deliver an improved SEND system which works for all. We ensure families have access to free, impartial information, advice and support to enable them to participate as fully as possible in the decisions that affect them. But I would welcome a conversation with my right honourable friend and parents from South Birmingham with suggestions on how to improve this.
Richard Trice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister has just agreed that there is a crisis of capacity for SEND provision in the state sector, and yet the government's deeply misguided VAT policy on school fees is exaggerating this crisis and exaggerating the crisis of EHCP assessments. Surely the right thing to do is actually grant a VAT exemption on SEND children to ease this crisis.
We are committed to ensuring that pupils whose needs necessitate a place at private school are not impacted by this policy. In England, Scotland and Wales, where a pupil's place in private school is funded by a local authority because of the pupil's needs that cannot be met in the state sector, the local authorities will be able to reclaim the VAT they are charged on the fees of these pupils.
Lewis Corky.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I draw members to my register of interest. Hertfordshire currently receives the third lowest SEND funding in the country, but since 2015 the number of children with educational, health and care plans in the county has grown a staggering 223%. Does the Minister agree with me that funding should reflect the current need?
High needs funding will increase by almost £1 billion in 2025 to 26 compared to 24-25. It brings the total high needs funding to £11.9 billion. The funding will help local authorities and schools with these increasing costs of supporting children and young people with special educational needs. In terms of the distribution of the funding, the national funding formula will be announced further on in November.
James Asser.
Thank you. Question number 9, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government is about fixing the foundation. To help to do this, we have launched an independent curriculum and assessment review, which aims to enable all young people to access vigorous and high-value qualifications and training. We will also introduce the Youth Guarantee, which will help 18 to 21-year-olds to access education, training, apprenticeship opportunities and receive employment support.
James Afzal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The London Design and Engineering University Technical College in my constituency is catering for 14 to 19-year-olds and offering at secondary level the kind of training often only found at further education level. Does the Minister agree with me we need to create more opportunities at secondary level for skills-based training to ensure it is both embedded and lasts post-16 and into the workplace, but improve employability skills as well?
Yeah. Thank you. I absolutely appreciate my honourable friend's question, and very thoughtful indeed. This government absolutely values university technical colleges for helping young people develop technical skills, also with employer support to move into technical careers. The independent curriculum and assessment review aims to broaden the curriculum, ensuring young people do not miss out on vocational subjects so that they leave education ready for employment.
Shebrin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Eastbourne, as the sunniest town in the UK, is on a mission to be a solar energy superpower. Now, at the heart of that is East Sussex College's green training hub that is supporting students young and mature to move into that sector. Will the Minister join me in celebrating the hub's second birthday, and will she come down to Eastbourne to visit the hub, visit Rebecca Conroy, the principal, and to come and soak up some Eastbourne sun?
Well, all I can really say is the sun is obviously shining on Eastbourne, even though it may not be shining everywhere else at this present time because of the weather. Listen, it sounds absolutely delightful to come and to visit Eastbourne and to celebrate the hub. This does fall to my noble friend, and I will indeed pass on these comments to her.
Right, Shadow Minister Neil O'Brien.
The sun always shines on Chorley, Mr. Speaker. One thing that helps young people gain skills is involvement in the cadets, but the department recently confirmed a decision to cancel supports payments to combined cadet forces in state schools. This payment was something that people involved in the cadets and teachers really valued. What assessment was made beforehand of the impact that this cut would have, and will the Secretary of State reconsider it?
I thank the honourable member for his question, and we absolutely respect all of our young people that are in the cadets or any other armed forces areas. Obviously raises a point. There are difficult choices to be made after 14 years of the previous government's failure, £22 million black hole. There are difficult choices to be made, but we're absolutely committed to children and young people and to doing the best we can do by them.
Indeed. Number 10, please, Mr. Speaker.
Obviously got carried away, Mr. Speaker. The government is committed to breaking down barriers to opportunities for all young people, including young carers who provide a critical role caring for their loved ones. We now collect specific absent data for young carers through the school census. Our statutory attendance guidance seeks to ensure they receive holistic support to overcome barriers to attendance.
Bobby Dean. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for her answer. One of the things that might be driving absences at school from young carers is long-term mental health conditions. And Royal Paediatrics and Child Health Society say that it could be as many as 1 in 5 young carers suffering from long-term mental health conditions. So can the department explain to me what measures they're taking to ensure there's sufficient help in place for people suffering those kinds of conditions?
I thank the member for his question. We really do want to make sure we support young carers in school, as well as other children that may be suffering from mental health conditions. This government is entirely committed to supporting young people with mental health conditions, and we are making sure that there will be mental health support in every school up and down the country. Now, in terms of young carers that may be experiencing increasing mental health conditions, there is also a programme where we're expanding the attendance mentoring programme to ensure that around an extra 10,800 young carers are supported, especially in the areas of mental health.
Speaker, question number 11.
With permission, Mr Speaker, I will answer questions 11 and 19 together. Our independent curriculum and assessment review was launched in July. It will support our ambition for high and rising standards for all and a broader curriculum with an excellent foundation in the core subjects. The review has launched its call for evidence. There is still time to participate, and the review will publish its interim report in early 2025 with final recommendations in autumn 2025.
So here's the growth.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and may I thank the Secretary of State for her response. Now, research from the University of Cambridge has shown that financial habits are often set by the age of 7, yet financial education for young people is still a postcode lottery. It's not part of the primary curriculum, and where it is, at the secondary level, many teachers lack resources and the confidence in teaching it. Can the Secretary of State please confirm if foundational life skills like these that all young people need to thrive will be considered at all key stages in the curriculum and assessment review?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for raising an important area that has been raised by many across this House in the past. I'm sure that the review will carefully consider what financial education young people need to meet that aim, and will of course look at what support we need to provide, teachers in particular, to enable them to teach the reformed curriculum successfully.
Nick Timothy.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I think parents will be quite alarmed by the answer given to my honourable friend, the member for Central Suffolk and North Ipswich earlier, with very little focus on academic attainment. The Education Secretary appointed Becky Francis, who attacked the Blair government for its obsession with academic achievement. The National Education Union denies that school accountability should be at the heart of our assessment system. This is wrong, so will she take the opportunity to rule out scrapping SATs in Year 6?
Mr Speaker, I rather fear the honourable gentleman and his party opposite have learned nothing from the massive defeat that was inflicted upon them by the voters in July. I can assure this House that the review will be evidence-based. It will not seek to fix things that are not broken. But what I would say to the honourable gentleman is his record is a SEND system in crisis, 1 in 5 children persistently absent from school. They can't learn if they aren't there. Standards falling, the disadvantage gap remaining, and over half of disadvantaged pupils in state schools at primary not leaving with the required standard of English and maths. He might be proud of that record. I'm not proud of it.
We now come to topicals. Edward Morello.
Topical number 1, please, Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Last week's budget protects key education priorities, putting education back at the forefront of national life and breaking down barriers to opportunity for every child and at every stage. The Department for Education settlement means we can begin to deliver on this government's mission: the rollout of funded childcare, rebuilding and maintaining our school and college estate, reforming the SEND system, investing in children's social care, and ensuring that young people have the skills that they need to seize opportunity. And the £2.3 billion increase in core schools funding, together with the fully funded 5.5% teacher pay award last July, further supports our commitment to recruit 6,500 new teachers. This government will fix the foundations to deliver change, and there is no better place to start than education.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. West Dorset has seen a 134% increase in the number of children requiring SEN support in the last 6 years. As of the latest data, over 275 children are waiting for educational healthcare plan assessments, with the average waiting time well in excess of the statutory minimum of statutory limit of 20 weeks. Will the Minister outline what specific measures the Department is implementing to ensure that the much-needed £1 billion investment announced in the budget is used to bring down waiting times for EHCPs in places like West Dorset?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Honourable Gentleman is right to raise his concern, as so many have, right throughout questions this afternoon, about the state of the system for supporting children with SEND. It isn't working, we know it needs reform, but it was an important first step to commit £1 billion extra into the system at this crucial time. But we do face some choices about how we take this system forward, how we make it less adversarial, more focused on better life chances for our children. And one of the first steps I took, Mr Speaker, was to refocus the work of the Department for Education on children with SEND.
MacCleary.
Mr Speaker, schools are closing across inner London and London more widely for many reasons. But what it does leave is premises that are empty or at risk of being sold off. What strategic oversight is the Secretary of State taking to make sure that we get the best value for our children from these properties?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for raising a really important area where there was a lack of thinking from the previous government about how we do this properly and seriously. There are challenges that come of demographic change, but there are also opportunities too. It's why we have announced more primary-based nurseries and empty classrooms, and why I think there is more that we can think to do around additional support in terms of provision for children with special educational needs and disabilities in particular.
Shall the Secretary of State order Trott?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And there's been a lot of discussion about our record in government. Under Conservatives, England climbed international education league tables. What happened to Labour on Wales? It fell. Okay, youth unemployment went down. School standards improved. Now, that is the record of the Conservative government, and it's one that we're proud to defend. Does the Secretary of State agree that academisation was one of the driving forces behind this very good school improvement?
Mr Speaker, I'm sorry to disappoint the right honourable lady, but we are going to be talking about their 14 years of failure for a very long time indeed. And that's because children across our country were failed by her party time and again. The children with SEND that we've heard about this afternoon. This was the measure that...
Order. Mr O'Brien, please. Enough is enough. Secretary of State. Briefly.
Mr Speaker, we are focused on driving up standards for our children, the length and breadth of our country, with more teachers, improved school budgets and making sure our children do not go to school in crumbling buildings, unlike the party opposite, who made sure that they went to school in schools that were literally propped up.
The problem that we have, Mr Speaker, is that while we're learning the lessons of our defeat, they are failing to learn. They are failing to learn from the brilliant record that we have on school standards. Results improved, more schools good or outstanding, and now the party opposite are trying to undermine one of the very bases for the success. So can I ask the Secretary of State, why is she scrapping the Academy Conversion Grant when it has been such a push behind what we are trying to do in terms of improving school standards?
Mr Speaker, they have learned absolutely nothing and parents won't buy it. We were faced with some very tough choices, Mr Speaker, a £22 billion hole in the public finances that she, as the former Shadow Chief Secretary, knows all too well. We are fixing the foundations and rebuilding our schools.
Please, are we going to work together? It'd be much easier for all of you, shall we? James.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. News of the budget for schools last week was greeted with relief in Bury North. The Derby High School is one of Bury's top performing schools, but its main building dates back to 1959, faces severely critical issues. The Derby High was due for renewal under Labour's Building Schools for Future programme, but ignored by 14 years of the Tories. Will the Minister meet with me and the Derby High's leadership to discuss urgent need for refurbishment funds?
Minister, please, these are topicals. I've got to get everybody in who's not got in. You've got in once already. Don't be greedy. Please, Minister.
We are committed to improving school buildings where we want our children to achieve and thrive. This will not be a quick fix. Bury Council has been awarded £1.8 million for the financial year to improve its school buildings, including Derby High School. Last week, this government increased next year's capital allocations for England to £2.1 billion, £300 million more than last year. I would, of course, be happy to meet with my...
Order. Obviously set up questions with very long answers. We should be able to show them. Colin Miller.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I noted the Minister's answer to the member from Dulwich and West Norwood, but can I push her to clarify? Will the £1 billion announced in the budget last week go to new expenditures in SEND? And what will the government do about the statutory override, which is preventing local authorities from going bust, with a total of nearly £4 billion owing?
I'm grateful to the Honourable Gentleman. We expect the additional funding to go directly to providing provision for children and young people, and we will set out wider plans in terms of the area that he asks about in due course.
Demi Eagle.
Thank you. What does the extra funding outlined for children in the budget mean for the growing number of foster children and children that need foster care?
Foster carers provide some of the best care for children who are looked after. £4 million of new funding has been allocated for regional foster recruitment hubs, bringing the total number of funding to £15 million. I'm pleased to say that these hubs will generate hundreds of new foster placements.
Charlie Dewhurst.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The teachers and staff at Hornsey School and Language College do a fantastic job for their 1,300 pupils, including 90 with SEND, but they do so in crumbling buildings with leaking roofs. With the news last week in the budget that this government will continue the Conservatives' school rebuilding programme, will she prioritise Hornsey School?
I note the honourable member's point on this specific college. As he will know, at the budget, the Chancellor committed £1.4 billion for next year to drive the delivery of the current school building reprogramme. Over the coming weeks and months ahead, we will work with trust and local authorities to identify which schools will be in scope.
Jane Kirkham.
Speaker, my constituency of Truro and Falmouth has some brilliant FE colleges and apprenticeship schemes, but some of those students struggle retaking GCSE and functional skills, maths and English over and over again. Will the Minister or the Secretary of State consider how we could do this in a better way so that those students don't end up feeling like a failure as they retake and retake?
The Department considers Level 2 English and Maths as essential, so students without this are required to continue studying to achieve these qualifications. The Independent Curriculum Assessment Review is looking at support for students without Level 2 in English and Maths at the age of 16-year-olds, and further information will follow shortly.
MacCleary.
Mr. Speaker, when I visit nurseries in my constituency of Lewes, many raise serious concerns about SEND in early years. Will ministers commit to an urgent review of SEND in early years to take account of funding shortfalls, staffing challenges and address the concerns that families have about insufficient places due to growing demand?
I can say to the Honourable Gentleman that as part of our review of the early years system and of the reform that is required, absolutely that is essential in terms of making sure we've got the right level of provision and early identification around SEND.
Oliver Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. £300 million extra was announced for further education in the budget. I know the Secretary of State's a big fan of Burnley. Will she come back to Burnley and meet Burnley College with me to talk about the expansion of their brilliant work and campus?
It was a pleasure to visit my honourable friend ahead of the election, and what a brilliant champion he is for Burnley and his constituents. I'd be very happy to come and visit. As part of setting out our commitment to further education, we put in place an additional £300 million alongside £300 million of capital funding for our colleges at the budget.
Tim Shannon, I mean Farrell.
We are never seen together in the same place. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Stramongate Nursery School in Kendal faces closure because of following an Ofsted inspection. Now, if it had been a regular school, it would have had help in order to remain open under special measures. As it is, this nursery has to close. Would she pay attention to this particular issue to make sure the children and the parents are protected and that childcare can continue?
At the case, and that he has a meeting with the Minister to discuss it further.
Chris Hinchcliffe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many of the towns and villages across North East Hertfordshire have experienced rapid population growth in recent years, but education opportunities have not kept pace. So will the Secretary of State meet with me to discuss the specific investment we need to expand school places alongside our growing population in my constituency?
I'm very happy to meet with my honourable friend.
Stuart Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's been a while. It's been a while indeed. Buckden Field School in my constituency were delighted when they had a new constructed building, but sadly that was short-lived as there were defects in the building. As a consequence, with interim arrangements, their role has gone up and down, and now they have a £45,000 shortfall in their budget. Would the Minister agree to meet with me and representatives of the school to discuss it?
I welcome the honourable gentleman to his place and would be more than happy to meet with him to discuss the challenges in his constituency.
Botterill.
The UK Social Mobility Commissioner highlighted the
the geography of disadvantage being experienced by young people in northern post-industrial communities like those in Ossett and Denby Dale? Does the Minister agree with the Commissioner that divisive and bold government action to improve educational attainment and opportunity is required for these children?
Mr Speaker, I do agree, and I'm grateful to my honourable friend for raising this. I'm leading the work across government on breaking down the barriers to opportunity to break the unfair link between background and success. We also know that tackling child poverty is a crucial part of it, and that's why it is essential that we get those recommendations as part of the Child Poverty Task Force to make sure that poverty does not hold back our children's life chances.
Alicia Kearns.
Helen Blythe from Stamford has campaigned courageously for improvements to allergy safety since her son Benedict died following a severe allergic reaction at school in 2021. Will this Minister commit to meet with me to discuss introducing a mandatory requirement for all schools to have a specific allergy anaphylaxis plan and adrenaline auto-injectors in every school?
I can confirm to the member that I met with Helen Blythe last week. Very happy to meet with her to take forward her concerns.
Rutland.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for working with Treasury colleagues to secure important additional funding to rebuild schools in last week's budget? Yeah. Will the Minister meet with me to discuss the serious repair issues facing St Nicholas and St Mary Primary School in my constituency, which are hampering the ability of children to thrive?
Yeah. I thank my honourable friend for his question. We are proud of the investment that we're making to school buildings and be delighted not only to meet with him but also visit his constituency.
Richard Holden.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Speaker. Will the Secretary of State acknowledge, as the Right Honourable Baroness Smith of Basildon has in another place, that concerns around freedom of speech and academic freedom in our universities are not a botched culture war, but are actually a serious matter that needs to be addressed properly?
Yes. As I said to the honourable gentleman at Education Questions last time, I believe in the vital importance of freedom of speech and freedom of expression within our university campuses. University is a place where young people should be exposed to views they might find difficult or challenging. What is important, however, Mr Speaker, is that any legislation in this area is workable.
Yeah. Chris Ward.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The current national guidelines on school transport mean that if you live less than 3 miles away, you don't get any support from the government on funding. And in my constituency, that means some of the most deprived kids have to either walk an hour and a half a day to and from school or find the money themselves from already struggling families to do so. So will the Minister meet with me to talk about this and to see if that 3 mile limit can be changed?
Yeah, we're absolutely committed to removing barriers to opportunity for every child, and no child should struggle to access education because of lack of transport. And we are very keen to understand how well the transport system is working for children accessing school, and I'd be happy to meet with the honourable gentleman to discuss it further.
Vicky Slade.
Speaker, the majority of teachers have had no more than half a day's training on autism. If the government is as committed as they say to make sure most children will send educated mainstream, what are they going to be doing regarding the teacher training to ensure that it meets children's needs?
The honourable lady is right to identify that this is an area where we must do more and we must do it better. I also hear, as she doubtless will, from teachers and support staff that they want additional training and support in this crucial area, and as part of our SEND reform, which we intend to take forward, we will make sure this is a part of it.
Debbie Abrahams.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, we know that children with special educational needs and disabilities are more likely to live in poverty. So how is my right honourable friend going to ensure that children with these special and complex needs are incorporated into the child poverty strategy?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend and the work that she leads on behalf of this House within the Select Committee. Our Child Poverty Task Force is absolutely focused on the area that she has identified. We will listen and engage directly with families across the UK, including those who have children with SEND. And we know, as she identifies, that child poverty does blight the life chances of far too many, and that must change.
Alison Bennett.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Carers Trust predicts that there are 2 children in every single classroom across the UK who are young carers, and yet 72% of schools say they have no young carers on their roll. What steps is this department taking to address this?
I thank the honourable member for her question. We have recently required all schools to be able to provide that data, so that therefore that we're collecting the data to actually anticipate and find out where the young carers are, and to ensure that they gain the support that they need. They will also gain this through their children's framework as well, so they can have an assessment alongside with their parents as well. And I'm happy to speak further on this.
Mr Speaker, I welcomed the Chancellor's budget last week, where she confirmed the recruitment of 6,500 teachers. Will the Secretary of State please confirm how the extra 6,500 teachers will be recruited, including specialist teachers, and also how issues like workload, working conditions and support for the training and development of new and existing teachers and school support staff?
We know, Mr Speaker, that having a well-supported, highly qualified teacher at the front of the class makes the single biggest difference to children's life chances. But it is also crucial that we tackle issues around workload and also pay. And that's why I was so delighted that we were able to bring in a fully funded 5.5% pay award for our teachers to recognise their brilliant hard work on behalf of our children, our families and our country.
Right, that completes questions. I'll let the front benches change over.